The day I was in a car accident, Tina was busy tending to her first love, Liam's mother, Margaret. I must have called her a dozen times. And all she texted back was, "You're not dying, so stop being dramatic. Margaret's an elderly woman, can't you cut her some slack?" The next day, I saw Tina hovering beside Margaret, fawning over her like some eager personal nurse. Margaret nitpicked everything, from the way she held the clipboard to how loudly she breathed, and Tina just kept smiling, acting like it didn't bother her at all. That image dragged up a memory I'd tried to suppress, the day my own mother, Molly, fell ill. Tina had wrinkled her nose at her and scoffed. "Don't you have a son? Why are you calling me for something this minor? I'm not your damn maid." After Mom was discharged, I left Tina a divorce agreement on the kitchen table. Then I said yes to Professor Howard's invitation to return to the lab and resume our research trials. If she enjoyed being someone else's doormat so much, who was I to stop her? "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable. Please try again later." That was the third time I'd called her that morning. Across from me, Dr. James sighed, clearly trying to be kind. "You know what, Mr. West, I'll cover the hospital charges for now. You're Professor Howard's student, and I trust his judgment." Embarrassed, I lowered my head. "Sorry you had to see me like this." He gave me a warm, knowing smile. "It's okay. I'm sure your wife's just swamped with work. Probably missed the call." Swamped with work? Maybe. But it was a Saturday. She was supposed to be home. Let's be honest, she didn't miss the call. She just didn't want to answer it. Because it was me on the other end. "Babe, I got into a car accident. I'm at Riverside City General. If you can, come tomorrow and help with the hospital fee. Maybe bring some fruit if you have time." I hit send and waited. It took a while, but she eventually replied. "You're not dying, so quit being dramatic. I'm taking Liam's mom to her hospital appointments. I don't have time to babysit you." I looked down at my leg, wrapped stiffly in plaster. If I could walk out and grab groceries myself, I wouldn't be asking for help. The next morning, I spotted her at the hospital. She was following behind Margaret like a loyal assistant, arms full of paperwork and lab results, practically tripping over herself to keep up. That look on her face, submissive, eager to please, like Margaret was her actual mother. I was sitting in a wheelchair, not far from them. The moment Tina's eyes met mine, she flinched. Her gaze dropped, as if gravity had suddenly gotten too heavy. So she did know what she was doing was wrong. Good. At least she wasn't fooling herself anymore. That night, Tina showed up at the hospital with a bag of mangoes. She placed them on the table with a thud. "Margaret's old. She's all alone. I just couldn't leave her like that." I looked at the bag of mangoes. Then I looked at her. "She's not your mother, Tina. She's Liam's." "Oh, cut it out," she snapped, suddenly fired up. "This is really what it's about, isn't it? You can't stand that I care about Liam and Margaret." She leapt off the bed like I'd insulted her core values. "Margaret's an elderly woman. Can't you be a decent human being and just show some grace? Why do you always have to keep score? Your mom got sick, and who was the one taking care of her? Me. So what now? Margaret doesn't deserve the same compassion? God, you're so selfish." She jabbed a finger toward the mangoes on the table. "You said you wanted fruit. I went out, ran all over town to get you some, and now what? Still not good enough? You're a grown man in a hospital bed, not a child. I've never met anyone as needy as you." I stared at her face, twisted with frustration, and calmly interrupted. "I'm allergic to mangoes." She froze. Then laughed, a dry, sarcastic little chuckle. "Allergic to mangoes? God, you're unbelievable. Plenty of people have fruit allergies, but you just have to make it a thing, don't you? Why is it that everyone else can handle it and you can't? In that moment, I felt all my energy drain away. I didn't want to argue. I didn't even want clarity. I get it, I said quietly. You're tired. Go home and rest. Tina blinked at me, incredulous. You're kicking me out? Because I brought the wrong fruit? I had no fight left in me. I made up an excuse. I just figured Margaret might need you tomorrow. At the mention of Liam's mother, Tina's face softened, just a touch. She looked at me, thrown off, like she couldn't quite believe I wasn't putting up a fight. You okay? She asked, hesitant. I shook my head. I'm fine. Really? Just go home. Margaret probably has a long day ahead. Tina's lips curled into a smug little smile. Well. At least you're not a total ass. I'll head out then. Today really wore me out. And just like that, she was gone. No apology. No recognition. Just tired, from taking care of someone else's mother. After Tina left, I lay in bed alone, eyes shut, trying to calm my thoughts. I'd barely settled when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. My mom's been feeling unwell lately. Tina's going to be staying with her for a while, won't be coming home. Hope you understand. Oh, and by the way, pack up Tina's things, I'll swing by tomorrow to pick them up. I stared at the message. And something in my chest twisted, sharp and sour. So no matter what I did, I would never measure up to Liam. If that's how it was going to be, then why had she said yes? Why marry me at all? I typed back. I'm in the hospital. Can't pack anything right now. If you want her stuff, come get it yourself. You know your way around our place well enough by now. Silence. No reply. I shut off my phone and closed my eyes again, but the past flooded in before I could push it away. I thought about the first time I met Tina. It was my freshman year of college. She was the star performer in the dance club, and I was just another student watching from the crowd. But God, the way she moved, like the stage belonged to her. I never missed a single performance. Eventually, we started talking more. I was drawn to her light, that effortless magnetism, and I began to pursue her. She wasn't exactly thrilled about it at first. I'm not into you, she told me, blunt as a slap. Can you just stop chasing me already? It was the first time I'd ever told a girl how I felt. And she'd shot me down without hesitation. Yeah, that one hurt. My friends tried to talk some sense into me. They said Tina and I were from two different worlds, that this could never end well. And maybe they were right. So I forced myself to forget her. Buried my head in books and assignments, threw myself into academics, anything to stop thinking about her. Then came the school showcase. The one that changed everything. The moment the stage rig collapsed, instinct kicked in. I didn't even think, I just ran. I threw myself over Tina, shielding her with my own body as the wooden beam came crashing down. Pain exploded across my back, but I didn't care. I didn't even notice at first. All I could think about was Tina, her legs. She danced. She lived for it. If anything happened to her legs. Thank God, she was okay. Not a scratch. I, on the other hand, spent the next 2 weeks flat on my back in a hospital bed. But during those 2 weeks, Tina came to see me every single day. Sometimes with fruit. Sometimes just to sit with me. Her eyes were always a little red when she walked in. Once, she looked at me and quietly said thank you. I'd scratched the back of my head, flustered. You don't have to feel weird about it. I'd have done the same for anyone. She didn't respond. But something shifted after that. The distance between us began to close. By the time I was discharged, Tina finally accepted my feelings. We officially became a couple. Everyone said she was lucky to have someone like me, someone who loved her so openly. But I never saw it that way. I always felt like I was the lucky one, just to have Tina in my life. After graduation, we got married. Everything felt like it was falling into place. It wasn't until after the wedding that I learned the truth. Tina had never really let go of her first love. She married me not because she chose me, but because he had moved to the UK. That night, I held her in my arms while she whispered, "Babe, he and I are over. I'm with you now. You're the one I love." And back then, I was naive enough to believe her. "Aaron?" The knock on the door pulled me out of the past. I looked up to see Eva, Professor Howard's assistant, standing at the doorway. "Why don't you come in?" I asked. She held up a bag of peaches with a cheerful smile. "I knocked, but you didn't respond. Thought you might be asleep." Setting the peaches on the table, she dragged a chair over and sat beside the bed. Then she picked up a fruit knife and started peeling. "Professor said you like peaches. I wasn't sure which kind you preferred, so I got a few. Want to try one?" I glanced at the peach in her hand and said, "No need to peel it. Just rinse it off and it's good to go." She rolled her eyes at me, half teasing. "You're the patient here. Professor gave me strict orders to take good care of you." After peeling, she rinsed the slices under the tap and handed them to me, neatly cut. "Oh, by the way," she added casually, "about the research project the professor mentioned, have you had time to think it over?" My hand paused midair. Of course. She hadn't come just to check on me. When I didn't answer, her tone softened. "Aaron, you know you're Professor Howard's top student. If you joined this project, it would mean the world to the team. We need you." I exhaled slowly and cut her off. "All right. I'll do it." Eva jumped up, visibly thrilled. "Wait, really? You're saying yes?" I nodded. The only reason I'd said no before was because research like this demanded isolation. Once you went in, it could be weeks, months, sometimes even years, before you came back out. I didn't want to leave Tina. I couldn't imagine locking myself away in a lab while she waited at home alone. But now? Now it seemed like she didn't need me at all. "That's amazing," Eva beamed, already pulling out her phone. "I'll tell the professor right away." She paused. "But what about Tina?" I gave a small shake of my head. "It's fine. She'll agree." Eva softened. "I'll let the professor know the situation. He'll give you 2 weeks to recover and maybe say goodbye properly." I nodded. 2 weeks. It would be enough. Enough to put a period on the sentence that was my years of loving her. I stayed in the hospital another week before the doctors cleared me to go home. In all that time, Tina didn't visit me, not once. She was working. And when she wasn't, she was busy playing housemaid to Liam and his mother, Margaret. Under the pretense of caregiving, Tina had moved straight into Liam's place. Every morning, she woke up early to cook breakfast for them. Then off to work. After work, she hit the supermarket to buy groceries and cook dinner for both of them. Day after day, she served them like a full-time maid. And somehow, she was happy doing it. Margaret, for once, actually seemed polite, at least on the surface. Now and then, she'd put on a show of offering to help in the kitchen. But Tina, eager to impress, took over everything without complaint. And how did I know all this? Because Liam posted it all on Instagram. He captioned one photo. "Nothing like coming home to a warm meal made by the one you love." Say what you want about him, Liam knew exactly how to keep Tina hooked. A few carefully curated snapshots and a sweet caption, and Tina was convinced his heart belonged to her. She cooked with even more care after that. The day I was discharged, I ran into Tina at home. She was packing up some of her things, mid-motion when I walked in. "Oh, hey," she said quickly, half distracted, "Margaret really needs someone full-time, so I'm heading back over there. You'll be okay on your own, right? Let's get divorced." The word slipped out, clean and sharp. She froze, halfway folding a shirt. "What did you say?" "I said let's get a divorce." Her hands dropped, and she slammed the clothes down onto the bed. "Aaron, what the hell is wrong with you? I've just been helping Margaret out for a few days, it's not like I'm never coming back. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eye. "You're my wife. And you're over there, washing someone else's laundry, cooking someone else's meals. What am I supposed to be in this marriage? When my mom, Molly, was in the hospital, when I asked you to..." "Oh my God. Not this again." She threw her arms up. "You always bring that up. You just can't let it go, can you? How many times do we have to go over this tired-ass story? When your mom, Molly, was in the hospital, what did that have to do with me?" Tina's voice was sharp, full of contempt. "She's your mother. Not mine. Why didn't you take care of her? I'm not your family's maid, why the hell should I be the one running around for her?" She stood there, shouting at me like I was the one who had crossed a line. Like I was the one being unreasonable. I stared at her. "Then what does Liam's mother have to do with you? Doesn't he have a son?" Her eyes narrowed. "Don't be ridiculous. You know Liam's busy with work, I'm just helping out a little, what's the problem?" I held her gaze. "And back then? I wasn't busy with work. When I was traveling for business, and I asked you to drop off just one meal for my mom, was that too much?" She didn't answer. I continued, voice low but steady. "You couldn't be bothered to lift a finger for Molly, but now you're bending over backwards for Liam's family. Was I ever worth that kind of effort to you?" Tina let out a sigh of exasperation, grabbing the handle of her packed suitcase. "I'm not gonna stand here rehashing the same old drama. I've got to get back to Liam's to help out with his mother." She started wheeling the suitcase toward the door. "And no," she said coldly without turning back, "I'm not signing any damn divorce papers." The day after she left, I opened Instagram. Liam had posted new photos. There they were, Tina nestled into his arms, head on his chest, smiling softly into the camera. That smile. I'd never seen that smile before. Not on her. Not with me. Even during the best years of our relationship, she'd never looked at me that way. I used to think she just wasn't the smiling type. But now I knew, she wasn't the smiling type with me. Back when we were newly married, I once suggested we take a trip together, just the two of us. Tina shut it down instantly. "My career's just starting to take off," she said. "I don't have time to waste on something that pointless." But, I started to protest. She cut me off. "I'm not saying I don't want to travel, Aaron. But look at our situation, we're just a middle-class couple. We don't have the time or the luxury to play around like that. Let's wait. Once things settle and we're more stable, we'll go. Then we can enjoy it without worrying." And I believed her. Our life wasn't hard then. She worked at the college theater club, nothing glamorous, but she had a steady paycheck. I was already an assistant professor, and my income was solid. A short trip wouldn't have dented us financially. Still, I told myself she just wanted to be cautious. That she was being practical. Forward-thinking. Later, I became a full professor. She rose too, from a stage performer to director of the troupe. We had money. We had time. So I asked again. And again, she brushed it off. "Come on, Aaron. It's been 2 or 3 years. Who has the energy now? Forget it. And just like that, my little dream, something so simple, kept getting pushed off. Delayed. Dismissed. Until it disappeared. And now, here she was, off traveling with another man. While I'd long since become an afterthought, pushed so far out of her world I may as well have never existed. Maybe it was never about money. Or timing. Or stability. Maybe she just wanted to travel with the person she loved. And I simply wasn't that person. That night, I walked alone into a small bar at the corner of our street. For once, I let go. Let the alcohol blur the edges of my grief. I drank myself into oblivion. Somewhere in the haze, I thought I saw 2 familiar figures, Mark and Eva, both students under Professor Howard. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in my own bed. My head throbbed, and my mouth was dry. Mark was sitting beside me, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me stir, he called out toward the door. "Eva! He's up. Can you bring some hot water?" "Coming," she called back. A moment later, Eva walked in, holding a steaming mug. She handed it to me gently, and I took a slow sip. The warmth brought clarity, and with it, a creeping embarrassment. I glanced at both of them. How did I get home? What were you guys doing there?" Mark rolled his eyes and lightly smacked the back of my head. "You've got nerve asking that. You were blackout drunk. If the bar manager hadn't had the decency to call your emergency contact, you'd probably still be curled up on some sidewalk right now." I scratched the back of my neck, sheepish. "Sorry. I really didn't mean to drag you guys into this." Mark scoffed. "You didn't drag me into anything. Eva's the one who bailed you out. She just happened to be nearby, I wouldn't have found you otherwise." I turned to Eva, guilt twisting in my stomach. "I'm sorry. You didn't need to do that." She waved it off with a soft smile. "It's fine. We're friends, right? That's what friends do, we help each other." Mark yawned and stretched. "All right, you're alive and talking. That's good enough for me. We're heading out, but don't forget, you better not be late next week. This research isn't exactly a joke." I walked them to the door, still feeling the weight of last night lingering in my body. As I turned back inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Tina. "I won't be coming home for the next few days. Take care of yourself. And stop bringing up divorce." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then I powered off the phone. As if the message had never come through. I walked back into the bedroom. Opened the closet. And quietly, started packing my things. 5 days before leaving, I handed in my resignation at the university. I didn't tell anyone the full story. How years ago, I'd turned down a research opportunity with my mentor, just to stay close to Tina. How I'd chosen a more stable path, accepted a faculty role, and built a life I thought she wanted. So when I submitted the paperwork, the staff were surprised. "You're resigning? But your leg just recovered, and your students have been asking when you'd return to class." "I've got other plans," I said with a polite smile, arms full of boxed-up office supplies. No one pressed further. Maybe they sensed it wasn't the time. I got home and opened the door. And there they were, Tina and Liam. I hadn't seen either of them in a week. Tina's eyes landed on the boxes in my arms. Her reflexes kicked in before her brain did. "What's all that?" "Just stuff I don't need anymore," I said casually. She nodded, but her gaze swept across the apartment like something didn't sit right. "I've only been gone a week, and it feels like a lot of stuff is missing." I took the box into the bedroom and calmly replied. "Just clearing out things I no longer find useful." She opened her mouth like she wanted to keep pressing. But Liam beat her to it. Tina's been such a trooper this week, he said, voice syrupy, too smooth. We just got back from our little vacation. Honestly, I should thank you, Aaron. You really helped make that dream possible. He flashed a practiced grin. Tell you what, dinner's on me. A proper thank you for everything you've done. And who knows, we might still need your help in the near future. Hope you won't mind too much. I met his eyes. There it was, the smugness, the need to win. He was fishing, wondering why I hadn't snapped, why I hadn't dragged Tina into a fight or slammed a door or called him out. But he didn't know. In 5 days, I'd be gone. I wasn't going to waste energy on a man I'd never see again. All I needed now was a clean exit. I said nothing. He didn't like that. He turned to Tina, feigning concern. Is he upset? I mean, you two are still technically married. I get it, it's awkward. Tina's brows furrowed in an instant. She turned on me with that familiar sharpness. Liam's offering a nice dinner and you're acting like a child, what's wrong with you? It's just a meal. It's not like he's poisoning you. You're coming. End of discussion. And quit being so petty. You're a grown man, start acting like it. I hadn't even spoken a word, and already, in Tina's version of the story, I was the villain. In the end, I went. Because arguing with her wasn't worth it. Because 5 days from now, none of it would matter. At the restaurant, a server came over to take our order. I had just opened the menu when Tina spoke up. Nothing too greasy. And no cilantro, Liam can't stand the taste. When the dishes arrived, she carefully served Liam, placing food onto his plate with practiced tenderness. Then, as if ticking off a box, she slid a plate of spicy buffalo wings in front of me. Liam can't have spicy food lately, she said, smiling. So I ordered this just for you. I stared at the wings for a moment. Then quietly set my fork down. I can't eat spicy food either. The irony was almost too much to swallow. 5 years of marriage. Tina never remembered my mango allergy. Never noticed I avoided anything spicy. But she could recite Liam's dietary preferences down to the smallest detail. Even his aversion to cilantro. Across the table, Tina froze for a split second. The moment hit her, briefly. And for once, there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But it vanished just as quickly as it came, replaced by a hurried wave of her hand and a casual request for a few more dishes. I didn't touch any of it. The rest of the meal, I said nothing. Ate nothing. Just sipped water, slow and silent. We had just stepped off the restaurant steps when my phone buzzed. It was Eva. Aaron, she said gently, Professor wants final confirmation. You're committing to the standard schedule, right? Once the first trial begins, you'll be under full confidentiality, no outside contact for a year, maybe 2. My eyes wandered ahead, to Tina and Liam. They were walking close. She instinctively reached for his hand as they navigated the steps. A movement so natural, so unconscious, it didn't need words. My voice came out steady. Yeah. Confirmed. I could hear Eva let out a breath of relief. Good. He was worried you might hesitate because of Tina. I looked away, toward the opposite street. No. I'm ready to leave. As soon as the words left my mouth, I heard a voice behind me. Who's leaving? Tina. She had just seen Liam off and caught only the tail end of the conversation. I turned, registering her confusion. My friend, I said quickly. He's moving away soon. Tina nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. She didn't ask anything else. 4 days left. That morning, I walked out of the bedroom just in time to see Tina smiling down at her phone. One hand held a photo frame. The other held her phone, where Liam's face filled the screen. "Liam, our wedding photos just came back," she said sweetly. "I picked them up today, the staff said we looked amazing. Like magazine models," they said. She was glowing. That kind of light doesn't come from lighting or makeup. It comes from joy. From love. I was walking toward the kitchen to fill a glass of water when I heard her. She caught sight of me mid-sentence. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Embarrassment, maybe. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something. I glanced at the photo in her hand and nodded. "They do look nice," I said calmly. Tina froze. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected me to look. Let alone speak. She suddenly realized it had been days since we'd exchanged anything more than polite silence. Even when she was away with Liam for a week, I never once texted or called. It unsettled her. Not enough to stop. But just enough to notice. Liam's voice kept going on in the background, talking about venues, schedules, color themes. Tina turned back to the screen, shook her head, and smiled again. Maybe she thought I was just being moody. 2 days left. I remembered that once I entered the research lab, I'd be cut off for a long time. No contact. No outside resources. Everything had to be brought in ahead of time. So I headed to the hospital to stock up on basic medications, just in case. As fate would have it, I ran into Tina and Liam just as they were stepping out of the outpatient wing. Margaret must have had an appointment. Tina opened her mouth to speak, but Liam got to me first. He stepped forward, hand extended, face full of practiced remorse. "Listen, I know you were never okay with Tina taking care of my mom. But I really didn't have a choice. I've got zero flexibility at work, and the doctor said she needs full-time support. I couldn't just sit back and watch her suffer." He pressed a hand to his chest like it physically hurt him to be so noble. "And once she's better, I swear, I'll take her far away. You and Tina will never have to deal with us again." I hadn't said a word yet. Tina reached for his hand protectively, eyes full of concern. "Not for me. For God's sake, Liam, this was my choice. None of this is on you." Then she turned to me. "I've said it before, Margaret's just an elderly woman who needs help. I'm just doing the right thing, and once she's better, I'll come back. I'm not going anywhere." If this had been a month ago, I might have exploded. Raged. Fallen apart. I might have blamed myself. Wondered if I hadn't loved her enough. If I wasn't attentive enough. If I'd somehow failed as a husband, driven her into Liam's arms. But now? Now I saw it clearly. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that she didn't love me. And when someone doesn't love you, they don't think twice about hurting you. I already knew about Tina and Liam. I had long since let go of any feelings I once had for her. So there was no reason for them to keep acting like I was some jealous fool, some bitter ex trying to sabotage their love story. I gave them a quiet glance. "I understand," I said simply, holding my bag of prescriptions. Then I turned to leave. There were only a few days left before I disappeared into the lab, and I still had some packing to finish. They hadn't expected this kind of composure, especially not from me. Tina's expression twisted into something I couldn't quite name. Confusion, maybe. A flicker of guilt. Or was it unease? After all, I'd spent a month furious about her involvement with Margaret. But now that everything was out in the open, I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't doing anything. And somehow, that unsettled her more. I had just reached the stairwell when Liam caught up to me. He grabbed my sleeve with a little too much force. Tina was still a few steps behind us, too far to hear. And now Liam dropped the mask. "So," he sneered, "how does it feel? Watching your own wife grovel in someone else's house, playing maid like a whipped dog?" He leaned in closer. Guess only a man like you could stomach that. I didn't reply. Didn't rise to it. I simply pulled my arm away, ready to walk off. But the motion caught him off guard. He lost balance, his body tipping sideways. Instinctively, I reached back and caught him by the wrist before he could fall down the stairs. I hadn't even let go yet when a voice rang out behind me, sharp, angry, and cutting. What do you think you're doing? Tina had arrived. Liam, ever the actor, instantly softened his features into a perfect picture of wounded innocence. I was just trying to thank Aaron for being so understanding, he said. I didn't think he'd react like that. Tina's face hardened. Aaron, she snapped, I can't believe you'd do something like this. Her voice echoed down the stairwell. You owe Liam an apology. Right now. I almost laughed. Not in amusement. In disbelief. You want me to apologize? I said, my voice eerily calm. Why don't you pull the security footage and see who owes who an apology? Or maybe even a thank you. Tina crossed her arms. Her mind was made up. Liam's not stupid. You think he'd throw himself down the stairs just to frame you? Liam's eyes flickered. Panic. Brief, but unmistakable. It's fine, he said quickly. Aaron was upset, it's understandable. Let's just go. But Tina shook her head. No. He will apologize. Today. I stood my ground. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do. And I meant it. I'd spent enough time swallowing blame that wasn't mine. I wasn't going to end this chapter on my knees. Liam must have realized that if Tina really checked the security footage, the truth would unravel. So he clutched his stomach, wincing in theatrical pain. Tina's fury vanished in an instant, replaced by worry. She rushed to his side, supporting him like he was fragile glass. I stood there, watching them disappear down the hallway. And an old ache swelled in my chest, slow, familiar, bitter. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of sharing a home, meals, holidays, heartbreaks. And still, not even a shred of trust. But that was okay. Because now, I was finally wide awake. And I still had time to walk away. The final day. Tina didn't come home. I assumed she was busy tending to sick Liam at the hospital. By then, my luggage had already been shipped to the lab. All that remained was a backpack. That evening, Tina finally returned. Her face was still taut with anger. Liam's still in the hospital, she snapped. He just wanted to thank you. Couldn't you have been the bigger person? Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Bigger person? I thought I'd already gone above and beyond. Letting my wife play housemaid for another man. Letting him parade through our life, through our home. And now, I was letting him have her place beside me too. Just then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and the tension on her face softened. Whatever, she muttered. I'm not arguing with you tonight. I need to be at the hospital early to take care of Liam. She slipped off her shoes, already half turned toward the hallway. Oh, and one more thing, once Liam's feeling better, book a reservation at that fancy restaurant. You need to apologize properly. Take him out to dinner. Say sorry. Let's just put this whole thing behind us. I didn't respond. If she'd looked around, really looked, she might have noticed. My toothbrush was gone. My clothes. My slippers by the bed. All of it. Actually, I was about to tell her. But her phone rang. Liam again. Her face tightened with worry. I'll be right there, she said into the phone. Then she turned to me, already reaching for her keys. Liam's not feeling well again. I'm going to check on him. You stay here. And don't forget about that dinner. The door slammed behind her. And in the silence that followed, I finally let the words fall. Soft. Steady. For no one but myself. Let's get divorced. I don't want you anymore. The room didn't respond. Only the ticking clock on the wall answered me. Tick. 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 A quiet rhythm. Like the end of a song. I sat in the living room all night. Didn't move. Didn't sleep. Just watched the darkness fade into pale morning light. At exactly 5 a.m., my phone buzzed with a reminder. Flight departs in 3 hours. I stood. Walked into the bedroom. Pulled out the backpack I'd packed days ago. Then I reached for the divorce agreement on the desk, already filled out, waiting for my signature. I picked up a pen. And beneath the formal lines and legal language, I wrote one last thing in my own hand. Tina, let's get divorced. I placed the papers where she couldn't miss them, front and center on the dining table. Then I slung the backpack over my shoulder, stepped outside, and called a cab. As the city stirred awake behind me, I whispered to no one. Goodbye, Tina. Elsewhere, Tina was leaving the hospital with Liam. He was finally stable, resting after another attention-hungry episode. She walked beside him in silence, typing a message on her phone. Aaron, did you make the reservation yet? I'm heading to the hotel now. No reply. She frowned. Waited. Refreshed the thread. The last message from him was from over 2 weeks ago. Half a month. And not a single word between them. A strange sensation crept down her spine. Why hadn't he messaged her in all this time? She tapped her fingers against her phone nervously, trying to dismiss the feeling. But her mind flicked back to that moment in the apartment, the day she showed Liam their wedding photos over a video call. Aaron had passed by, glanced at the frame, and said, "They do look nice." That wasn't sarcasm. That wasn't indifference. That was grief. Real, quiet grief. In their 9 years of knowing each other, Tina had never seen him look like that. And it wasn't just the look. It was the silence afterward. Since then, he'd withdrawn. No complaints. No arguments. Just distance. He stopped initiating anything. Stopped asking. Stopped reacting. And now she realized, he hadn't just gone quiet. He had started disappearing. Her heart began to race. A growing panic started clawing at her chest. Still, she told herself. He's just upset. I've been a little distracted lately. He'll come around. She gripped her phone tighter. Typed another message. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted. Driver, she said abruptly. Can you go a little faster? The car picked up speed. When they finally arrived at the restaurant, Tina got out first. Checked the entrance. Looked around. Aaron wasn't there. He hadn't been there for a long time. Tina pulled out her phone and called Aaron. The line didn't even ring. Powered off. Her stomach twisted. Beside her, Liam asked, Tina, what's wrong? He's not here yet? Then, after a pause, do you think he misunderstood something? Maybe I should go. Just in case. But Tina wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes were scanning every corner of the restaurant like Aaron might appear from a shadow if she just waited long enough. He said he'd be here. She'd told him last night, book the place, be ready in the morning. So where was he? Why wasn't he answering? Why was his phone off? A rising panic gripped her chest. She quickly dialed the university. Maybe he'd just gone into the office early. Hello? A man's voice picked up. It was Director Paul. Director, this is Tina. Is Aaron on campus today? I can't seem to reach him. There was a brief pause on the line. Oh, no. Aaron's not here. Tina's brow furrowed. Not there? Can you check? I've been trying to call. No, Paul said gently. He resigned. About 5 or 6 days ago. The words hit like a slap. He resigned? Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Yes. We assumed you knew. He didn't say much, just that he had something else lined up. Seemed like he was leaving town. Tina took a step back, her entire body suddenly cold. She shook her head. No. That doesn't make sense. Aaron had stayed for her. For the marriage. For everything they'd promised each other. He wouldn't just quit. He wouldn't just leave. Would he? She hung up. Her hands trembled as she dialed Aaron's number again. And again. And again. Each time. The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. She gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. And hundreds of miles above her, somewhere over the clouds, Aaron sat in a window seat on a flight bound for Boston. His phone was turned off. His seatbelt fastened. And his eyes stared blankly out at the sunrise breaking across the horizon. Back on the ground, Tina's breath hitched as the automated voice repeated again. The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. She clutched the phone to her chest. Everything had seemed fine yesterday. Maybe tense. Maybe distant. But not final. Why today? Why now? Her thoughts spiraled. She couldn't take it anymore. She turned abruptly and ran, pushing past Liam, ignoring his questions, her heels echoing through the lobby floor. She had to go home. She had to check. He had to be there. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he was asleep. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't left. That tiny, desperate maybe burned in her chest like a dying ember. She didn't stop until she was in the car. Drive. Fast, she told the driver, eyes fixed on her screen. Still no response. Still nothing but silence. And that's when she began to realize. She was too late. When Tina pushed open the front door, the apartment was still. Too still. The kind of quiet that didn't come from a nap or an argument. It was the silence of absence. She stepped inside, her heels clicking softly on the floor, echoing through the hollow air. Aaron wasn't home. That much was obvious. But something else caught her attention. The framed photo that used to sit on the living room table was gone. It was one of the few pictures they had taken together. Aaron had always treasured it. He cleaned the glass every morning, like it was sacred. Now, the spot where it had always stood was empty. She turned toward the bathroom. His razor, gone. Opened the closet. His clothes. All of them. Gone. The realization hit her in pieces. Not in a sudden wave, but in quiet, surgical cuts. He hadn't just stepped out. He'd erased himself. From the apartment. From their life. From her. Tina's mind raced. A memory surfaced, weeks ago, after she and Liam returned from their trip. The apartment had felt emptier then, too. She'd even noticed something missing, but couldn't name it. Aaron had said he was just clearing out unnecessary clutter. And she'd believed him. But now she understood. He hadn't been clearing clutter. He had been clearing out. His belongings. His presence. Their shared history. And now, he was gone. Completely, utterly gone. Her gaze swept the room again in a last-ditch hope, clinging to denial. Then she spotted something on the dining table. A file folder. She rushed forward and picked it up. Divorce papers. His name was already signed at the bottom. For a moment, everything inside her just stopped. It was as if lightning had struck her spine. The suspicion she had buried deep beneath excuses, distractions, and pride, was now undeniable truth. Aaron wanted a divorce. And it wasn't a threat. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was done. But why? Because she took care of Margaret? Because of Liam? But Aaron had always loved her, deeply. He had risked his life for her, once. He had given up everything for her. How could he just let go? How could he stop loving her? Her mind spun as flashes of last night returned. Aaron sitting on the couch, silent. Not angry. Not bitter. Just, still. Still in a way she had never seen before. Like all the light inside him had gone out. Had that been the moment? Was that when he'd finally decided? Had he been trying to tell her, one last time, before she ran out the door to tend to Liam? She remembered the way he looked at her then. Not with resentment. Not with love. Just emptiness. Was that when he said goodbye? Her knees gave out and she collapsed onto the sofa, the divorce papers still clutched in her hand. The apartment was echoing with silence. But in Tina's mind, there was nothing but noise. Racing thoughts. Ringing ears. A truth she couldn't stop circling back to. She had lost him. And she hadn't even noticed, until it was already over. The phone on the table rang and rang. Calls from her parents. Friends. Colleagues. Tina didn't answer any of them. She didn't have the strength. She just sat there, still, lost, numb, trying to piece together the one question that gnawed at her relentlessly. Why did Aaron leave her? According to the university, he had handed in his resignation 5 days ago. 5 days ago. The realization struck like cold water down her spine. That was the day she left for the trip with Liam. She had told herself it would be one last indulgence. A childhood wish fulfilled. Then she'd come back, settle down, and finally give Aaron the life he deserved. But Liam had texted her that morning, saying he'd found a bridal shop he loved and asked if she'd go with him to take a few photos, just for closure, just for old time's sake. The excitement had clouded her thoughts. Without hesitation, she said yes. And now, every memory from the last 2 weeks began resurfacing. With unbearable clarity. Leaving Aaron alone in the hospital. Skipping his calls. Choosing Liam, again and again, under the banner of repaying a debt. She had told herself it was temporary. That Aaron would understand. That when it was all over, she would sit down and explain everything, and he would forgive her. Because he loved her. Because that's what love did. But now he was gone. Gone. And she never even had the chance to speak. Her mind raced through every moment she had ignored. Aaron's silence. His calm. His refusal to argue. In the past, he would have fought. Would have raised his voice. Would have made a scene. But this time, he hadn't. She thought it meant he had matured. That he trusted her. That he was waiting patiently for her to return. She never stopped to wonder if maybe he had already let go. She clutched her phone tighter, her hands trembling. She wanted to scream. To demand an answer. To ask him why he didn't stop her. Why he didn't yell. Why he didn't try. But she didn't know. Aaron hadn't walked away on a whim. He hadn't packed his bags in a single night. He had been leaving her for 15 days. Every day, one drawer emptied. One photo taken down. One piece of affection peeled away. Until there was nothing left. Not even anger. Just silence. Tina sat motionless in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the space he left behind. All the years. All the memories. And all the words she'd saved for later. Now left with no one to hear them. 2 hours later, the plane touched down in Boston. Just before takeoff, Eva had messaged me to say someone would be there to pick me up. She was worried I might get lost, and, true to form, had arranged everything ahead of time. The arrivals hall was full. People holding signs, flowers, coffee, phones. I scanned the crowd twice, then again, but saw no one with my name. I reached for my phone to call Eva, when I heard a bright, playful voice behind me. "Aaron." I turned around. A girl was walking toward me, beaming, her smile wide and familiar. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" She gave me a dramatic scowl, though her eyes sparkled. "Only 5 years and you've already forgotten me? I should file a complaint with Professor Howard." The moment she said it, the memory clicked. The flushed cheeks. The glassy eyes behind safety goggles. The trembling voice over a broken set of data. Hannah. Back when I was finishing grad school, Professor Howard had just taken on a new student, a young girl named Hannah. We hadn't spoken much. I was buried in my own research, preparing to graduate. But I still remembered the day I found her at the lab bench, shoulders tense, eyes red. She was stuck on a set of experiments, couldn't figure out where her data kept breaking down. I'd been on my way out when I noticed her. I stopped. Asked if she needed help. Step by step, we traced the issue until we found it. That was the last real interaction we had. Now here she was again, older, more confident, radiant in a way I hadn't recognized at first. She fell into step beside me, naturally taking the lead. "So you do remember me," she said, mock hurt. "I thought for sure I'd been erased from your brilliant mind." I rubbed the bridge of my nose. After so many years with someone like Tina, guarded, reserved, it felt strange to be met with such easy warmth. But Hannah didn't seem to notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. Without hesitation, she reached out and looped her arm through mine. "Come on. Don't just stand there like you're lost. Professor Howard's been waiting for you like a kid counting down to Christmas." I let myself be pulled along. We made our way out of the airport and into the parking lot. The ride back was fast. Boston's gray skyline flickered past the windows like chapters being flipped. And before I knew it, we were at the lab. Standing outside Professor Howard's office door. I froze. My hand hovered over the handle, heart suddenly unsure. After everything, after Tina, the house, the silence, I thought I'd be ready for this. But something in me hesitated. Because walking through this door didn't just mean starting a new project. It meant starting a new life. One where everything that had come before would stay behind. Back when I was nearing graduation, Professor Howard had tried to persuade me to stay and continue my research. He was persistent, hopeful I'd join his new lab initiative. But at the time, Tina had just said yes to being my girlfriend. My whole world revolved around her. So I turned him down, choosing instead to follow her to a teaching position at a university. Years later, Professor Howard reached out again. The lab's funding had just been approved. The project was ready to launch. He spent over an hour on the phone that night, trying to convince me to come back. But by then, Tina and I had been together for 3 years. I couldn't bear the idea of leaving her behind. I declined again. I still remember how angry that made him. He didn't yell, but the silence on the other end of the call was deafening. Even 2 weeks ago, when Eva called to invite me back, I hadn't dared speak to him directly. A part of me still feared that maybe he hadn't forgiven me. Hannah must have sensed my hesitation as I stood frozen outside his office, unsure whether to knock. Her eyes twitched mischievously. Then, without warning, she raised her voice and shouted toward the door. "Professor! Aaron's back!" My eyes widened in alarm. I turned, startled, and instinctively reached out to stop her. My hand covered her mouth just as she finished the sentence. Soft lips, warm breath. We both froze. Hannah blinked up at me. I jerked my hand away, like I'd just touched something burning. She turned her head, avoiding my gaze, her ears blooming crimson. Neither of us said a word. Before I could find something, anything, to say, a familiar voice called out from the office. Well? Are you coming in or not? No more room for doubt. I straightened my posture, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. It had been 5 years. And yet the moment I stepped inside, everything came rushing back. Except now, Professor Howard's dark hair had thinned and streaks of silver clung to his temples. The guilt hit me hard. He looked at me, his one-stop student, the one he'd poured his hope into, and the one who had walked away. 100 things could have been said. But all he offered was a heavy sigh. This time, you're staying. And you're going to work, properly. I swallowed the knot in my throat and nodded. Hard. I will. He said nothing more. Just waved his hand. Go. Let Hannah take you to your dorm. Get some rest. Hannah led me across the campus grounds to the staff dormitories. The sun had begun to dip low in the Boston sky, casting long amber shadows across the stone buildings. We didn't talk much on the way. She seemed to sense my exhaustion. As soon as we reached the room, I dropped my backpack on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the bed with a deep, involuntary sigh. From last night till now, I'd only slept those 2 cramped hours on the plane. I hadn't stopped moving, hadn't stopped thinking. But now that I was here, finally, completely here, my body gave out. Sleep crashed over me like a tide. I didn't even unpack. Didn't pull back the sheets. Within moments, I was out cold. I was deep in sleep when the ringing started. Reluctantly, I reached for my phone, brain still clouded with exhaustion. Without checking the screen, I answered on instinct. Tina's voice came crashing through the speaker, sharp with anger. Aaron, where the hell are you? Her voice pierced the quiet room like shattering glass, jolting me awake in an instant. I blinked at the time. I'd barely been asleep an hour. Fatigue weighed heavy on my body, and the irritation of being yanked from precious rest crept into my voice. I think the divorce papers made it pretty clear, I said, tone flat. We're divorced. That one word, divorced, ignited the fuse. Tina's voice rose, louder, tighter. No. I never agreed to that. You want to end our marriage? Fine. But at least have the decency to give me a reason. You disappear without a word, leave behind some papers and a single sentence, and that's it? That's your goodbye? Her voice cracked, barely, just enough to catch the tremor. There it was. The edge of something raw. Not just fury. Abandonment. Because she hadn't expected it. She'd never imagined that I would be the one to walk away. 9 years together. And she never thought I'd let go. But I was too tired to keep digging up answers she never wanted to hear. I'm not going to pretend to be okay with watching my wife serve another man's family like a maid, I said coldly. You think I could stomach that? Keep dreaming. And besides, I finally realized. You don't love me, Tina. You never did. There was a long pause. Long enough that I started to drift again, head sinking back into the pillow. Then her voice came through, quieter, raspier. So that's it? That's why you're divorcing me? I didn't answer. Because it wasn't just that. It wasn't just the way she chose Liam, or the trip, or the hospital, or the wedding photos. It was all of it. It was realizing that the tenderness she gave Liam. The soft tones, the eager care, the natural closeness. I had never received that. Not once. It was never mine. And that's when I understood. She didn't love me. And I was finally done pretending she did. Her voice returned. I don't agree to this divorce. Tell me where you are. I want to see you. But I had no intention of seeing her again. There was nothing left to say. No apology to wait for. No story to untangle. No, maybe, to hold on to. Just silence. And the line between us, fraying. In the US, divorce isn't as simple as signing a piece of paper. Some states require mutual consent and a signed separation agreement for a fast-track process. But if one party refuses to cooperate, it can drag on, months, even years, in court. Still, I couldn't afford to care about that now. A good ex should vanish completely. Like they never existed in your orbit at all. And as far as I was concerned, there was no reason for Tina and me to ever speak again. I suggest we part peacefully, I said. Leave each other a little dignity. Otherwise, everything you and Liam have done will go public. I didn't wait for her response. I ended the call. Then calmly opened my call log, scrolled to her number, and added her to my blocked list. I opened Instagram on a whim. Dozens of unread messages. From Tina. The earliest ones, sent this morning, started mildly. Where are you? Why won't you respond? Then the tone changed. Panicked. Desperate. Demanding. Message after message, all day long. Probably more messages than she'd sent me in the entire last month combined. I scrolled through a few. Didn't bother to read most. Then I blocked her there, too. Set the phone down. Pulled the blanket over my head. And slipped back into sleep. Meanwhile, back in the city she no longer shared with me. Tina stared at her phone in stunned silence. The call had ended. Abruptly. He'd hung up on her. Aaron had never done that before. He hadn't even explained where he was. She hit redial immediately, only to be met with the cold mechanical voice. The number you have dialed is unavailable. Please try again later. Her fingers flew to the messaging app. She typed a long text. Sent it. And then. Message sent. Delivery refused by recipient. She froze. Her blood ran cold. He blocked me? Aaron had been angry before. Distant, cold, even sarcastic. But never this. Never silence. Never erasure. Fear twisted in her chest, followed closely by anger. It had to be because of Margaret. She had told him so many times, it was just a favor. Margaret was old. Sick. Alone. And Liam had saved her life once. She owed him. Aaron should have understood that. Why couldn't he just support her? Wasn't that what love meant? But after the anger, came something worse. Panic. She had never imagined divorce as a real possibility. Not from Aaron. Not after 9 years. But now? Now she didn't even know what city he was in. She couldn't call. Couldn't text. Couldn't reach him, at all. She was shut out. Cut off. Completely and deliberately left behind. And the more she tried to deny it, the more she began to understand. Aaron was really gone. In a moment of panic, Tina thought of Jason, Aaron's closest friend. She had only been to his place once, during a get-together where Aaron had brought her along. Now, years later, she showed up again, breathless and disheveled, trying to piece her way back into a life that no longer belonged to her. When Jason opened the door, he found her standing on the threshold, hair windswept, eyes anxious. His jaw clenched. He had never been a fan of how she treated Aaron. Back then, he had tried to stay silent out of respect, because Aaron loved her. Because she was the girlfriend. But after Aaron confided in him, after he heard why his best friend had packed up and disappeared, Jason's disappointment had curdled into something bitter. How could someone be so ungrateful? How could she claim love while chasing after another man? So now, seeing her on his doorstep, Jason didn't even try to mask the contempt in his voice. Well, look who it is. He leaned against the doorframe, sarcasm dripping from every word. The ex-wife who played nursemaid to her, hero, and shot wedding photos with another man. What brings you to my place? Tina's breath caught in her throat. He knew. He knew about Liam. About the photos. But there was no time for shame. She stepped forward, voice strained. Where's Aaron? Jason rolled his eyes. Funny, wasn't it? When Aaron was there, constantly by her side, always showing up, she'd treated him with cold indifference. Now that he was gone, she suddenly cared? I don't know, Jason said flatly, already beginning to close the door. Tina panicked. Her hand shot forward to block the door. Crack. She hadn't expected him to shut it that hard. Pain exploded through her wrist, and tears sprang to her eyes on instinct. She clutched her hand, gasping through the sting, but didn't back away. Please, she whispered, voice trembling but firm. I need to know where he went. Jason swore under his breath. He looked at her, this woman his best friend had adored, protected, chased for years. And all he could see was someone who didn't deserve him. You're kidding me, right? He stepped forward, anger rising with every word. You ditched my friend to play house with another man. You followed him around like some unpaid housemaid. You went on a goddamn honeymoon with him. And now? Now you want to know where the man you divorced went? Tina's heart sank. So even Jason had turned against her. Because of Margaret. Because she'd chosen, just for a moment, to repay a debt of gratitude. But they didn't understand. She wasn't unfaithful. She never crossed that line. All she had done was agree to take a few photos. A symbolic gesture. One final favor to someone who once saved her life. That was all. But looking at Jason's face now, she realized that didn't matter anymore. Not to him. And maybe not to Aaron either. Tina repeated the line she had told Aaron more times than she could count. Liam saved my life. I only helped him take care of his mother and went on that trip to fulfill an old regret. That's all it was. Her voice trembled, but her expression was firm. Just give me his address. Let me explain in person. Jason let out a mocking laugh, sharp and cold. He spat on the ground in disgust. You want his address? He shook his head, almost in disbelief. Keep dreaming. I'm not about to help you ruin him again. Then, he took a step forward and looked her straight in the eyes. Aaron saved your life too. Or did you forget that part? Tina froze. What? What did he just say? Aaron? Saved her life? When? She searched her memory, desperately, frantically, but there was nothing. Not a single moment where she could recall Aaron doing anything of that magnitude. Her voice cracked. What do you mean? When did Aaron ever save me? Jason's eyes narrowed. The disbelief on her face, the complete lack of awareness, lit a fire inside him. Wow, he muttered bitterly. You really forgot, didn't you? 6 years ago, he snapped. That night. That one goddamn night. You walked away without even a thank you. You never asked how he was. You just moved on. And he never blamed you. Not once. But now? Now you dare show up here and ask for his address like he owes you something? Jason couldn't stop himself now. He told her everything. Every single sacrifice. The way Aaron shadowed her life from behind the curtains for almost a decade. All the things he gave up just to stay close. The nights he stayed up to help her prepare lessons, edit papers, cook when she was sick. The promotions he declined. The experimental project he gave up, twice, because she needed him. And finally. That night. The one she remembered so differently. Jason shoved his phone in her face, showing her a photo. Aaron unconscious in a hospital bed, hooked to oxygen, bandages wrapped around his ribs, the edges of his body bruised dark purple. That, Jason growled, was the price he paid for saving you. Tina couldn't breathe. She stumbled back from the doorway like she'd been hit. Jason slammed the door without another word. She didn't remember how she got home. Her mind was spinning, her thoughts colliding with each other like a car crash that wouldn't stop replaying. Aaron? Not Liam? She clutched her forehead, heart pounding. Could I really have misremembered something so important? For 6 years? If what Jason said was true. Then she had thanked the wrong man. Loved the wrong man. Devoted herself to the wrong man. And all this time, Aaron had stayed silent. No blame. No resentment. Just disappeared. Like a ghost who had finally given up haunting the living. The panic was overwhelming now. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't breathe. She had to know the truth. Tina rushed outside and hailed a cab, yelling the address of Liam's house to the driver. As the car sped through the streets, her thoughts spiraled. The trip. The night of the accident. The timing. The aftermath. Something didn't add up. And she needed to know, tonight, what really happened that night. Because if Jason was right, then everything she built on that gratitude was a lie. She had always remembered one thing clearly from that night. The hands. The way they clamped over her mouth. The way they dragged her into a dark alley just off the campus sidewalk. The cold edge of a knife pressed against her waist. The smell of sweat and alcohol. And the hands, so invasive, so cruel, ripping at her blouse. That was the moment she gave up. She was sure she'd never see the sun again. But then, someone slammed into her attacker. A shadow, blinding fast, tackled the man to the ground. The struggle was a blur of grunts and fists. Tina had curled up against the wall, frozen, her whole body trembling. She tried to pull out her phone, but her fingers couldn't stop shaking. Terror overwhelmed her, and before she could even hit 911, everything went black. When she woke up, the first face she saw was Liam's. So naturally, she assumed it was him. Her savior. Her hero. She never questioned it. But now, everything Jason had told her was cracking that memory apart. According to him, it was Aaron who had saved her. He had taken a knife to the gut and nearly died. He lay in the hospital unconscious for 3 days. By the time he woke up, she had already checked out, never knowing the truth. And Aaron, he never said a word. He didn't want to remind her of the trauma. Didn't want her to feel indebted. Didn't want to reopen a wound that might have never healed. He just let her believe the lie. And for 6 years, she had given all her gratitude, her trust, and eventually her love. To the wrong man. The panic hit her like a truck. Tina couldn't think straight. Her thoughts spiraled. What have I done? What have I done to him? By the time the cab pulled up in front of Liam's house, her mind was a mess of guilt and disbelief. Liam opened the door, clearly startled to see her. Tina? I thought you were going to talk to Aaron. What are you doing here? Then he noticed her hand, still red and bruised from the incident at Jason's door. Jesus, what happened to your hand? Hold on, let me get the first aid kit. Don't. Her voice cut him off. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Liam, she said slowly, deliberately, are you really the one who saved me that night? She locked eyes with him. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Liam faltered. Just for a second. A flicker of panic flashed through his gaze. But he caught himself. He smiled, too quickly. Of course I did. You woke up and saw me, remember? That's how you knew it was me. He sounded confident. But Tina had been watching closely. And she had seen it. That moment of hesitation. That split second of guilt. And in that moment, everything inside her collapsed. She didn't need him to confess. She already knew. Liam wasn't her savior. He never had been. Tina shut her eyes. Her heart, already frayed by the morning's chaos, now shattered completely, splintered beyond repair. Liam, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the thundering in her ears, you're not the one who saved me 6 years ago. Liam's pupils contracted. A flash of unease flickered through him. How could she know? Back then, she was certain he was the one. So why was she dragging this up now? Still, he didn't flinch. He smiled softly, keeping his voice calm as he reached for her hand. Tina, come on. What are you talking about? But her hand snapped away like he'd burned her. All the guilt she'd buried, all the grief over Aaron's disappearance, it surged now, wave after suffocating wave. She couldn't hold it in any longer. It was Aaron, she screamed, her eyes red, breath shaking. The one who saved me was Aaron, he's been by my side for almost 9 years. And you? Her voice broke. You lied to me. I found proof. How could you? The dam burst, and Liam could no longer hold the mask. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders slumping. He knew there was no walking this back. The truth was, that night 6 years ago, he hadn't saved anyone. He had just happened to be visiting a friend at the hospital. Walking past Tina's room, he'd seen her lying unconscious, wires hooked to her arms, bruises on her skin. And then, pure coincidence, she had woken up. Her eyes found his, and in her groggy haze, she'd whispered, "Thank you, you saved me." Liam had frozen. He could have corrected her. He should have. But he didn't. Some selfish part of him had wanted to be her hero. So he let her believe the lie. He let it root itself in her heart. And before he could do anything else about it, his family shipped him off to study in the UK. For years they lost contact. But the guilt stayed with him like a shadow. And when he returned and found her again, he picked up exactly where the lie had left off. Now, facing the firestorm of Tina's grief, all he could do was mutter weakly, "Tina, I never meant to hurt you. I thought maybe if you believed it, you'd love me more." Tina was already stepping back, her face pale, every inch of her screaming with urgency. She didn't care why anymore. She didn't want excuses. She had to find Aaron. She had to undo the damage she'd caused. "I'm going to him," she said, her voice hollow but unwavering. "And I'm telling him everything. The truth about you. About what you did." Panic swept across Liam's face. His voice rose, desperate now. "No, Tina, please. My company just finalized a new investor round. If this gets out, I could lose everything." He took a step toward her, pleading. "You wouldn't ruin me like that, would you? After everything?" Tina didn't respond. She was already turning to leave. But Liam's next words stopped her in her tracks. "Aaron already knew, you know." His tone shifted, low, almost cruel. "About the trip. The honeymoon you took with me. He found out over a week ago." Her feet froze. Her whole body stilled. Liam continued, smug now. "And he still left. He's gone, Tina. He doesn't want you anymore. So what's the point? Why chase a man who already gave up on you? He knew about the trip. The words hit her like a blade to the chest. A wave of anguish surged through Tina's body, spreading outward from her sternum like ink bleeding through paper. Her knees nearly gave out. Hot tears poured from her eyes in uncontrollable torrents. So that was it. It had all come from Liam. He had told Aaron. That's why Aaron resigned. That's why he had seemed so eerily calm during their final days. And that's why, on that day, when Aaron had seen her with Liam, he hadn't even looked surprised. He'd known. He had known everything. And she hadn't seen a damn thing. Every thought, every memory stabbed her like broken glass against bare skin. The guilt clawed through her chest, shredding everything inside. She had hurt the man who had saved her life. Not just once. Not in passing. For years. Tina wiped her face, but her tears kept coming. Still, something had shifted. Beneath the devastation was something else. Resolve. She was going to find Aaron. She was going to apologize, not with words, but with action. She was going to fix this. Every good thing he had ever given her, she would earn it back. Liam noticed the change in her and grew frantic. He stumbled out of bed, still half feigning his illness, reaching to stop her. Tina, wait, after all these months, are you really going to say you never felt anything for me? But she was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, irrevocably, completely, gone. Her mind was filled with images of Aaron. The boy in college who'd walk just a few paces behind her, never too close, never too far. The man who would spend weeks planning the perfect gift, not because of holidays, but because he remembered the small things she'd said in passing. She had once dated him out of curiosity, wondering if someone could truly love the same person, day after day, year after year, with that kind of quiet conviction. Now she knew. He could. And somewhere along the way, she had come to love him back. She just hadn't realized it until she'd already lost him. She turned back to Liam, her eyes cold. No, she said. Not once. And after today, you'll never hear from me again. That very day, Tina went public with everything, every lie Liam had told, every false claim, every manipulation. She marched straight into his company, raised hell in the lobby, and made damn sure everyone knew exactly what he'd done. The fallout came fast. Liam was fired on the spot. When Margaret heard, she stormed into the office building screaming at everyone in sight. Security called the police. Both Margaret and Liam were arrested for disturbing the peace and endangering public order. Tina didn't stay to watch. She never asked what happened to them after that. Because for the first time in 9 years, her heart and her path were finally clear. She couldn't accept not knowing where Aaron was. Not now. Not like this. So she went back to Jason's. At first, he wouldn't even open the door. But Tina wasn't about to back down. When asking once didn't work, she showed up every single day, standing outside his apartment, waiting. Rain or shine. Morning till dark. By the 4th day, Jason had had enough. He opened the door just wide enough to growl. He went to a lab. He's not in Riverside anymore. That's all I'm saying. He slammed the door shut before she could ask anything more. But it was enough. Tina and Aaron had gone to the same university. And she remembered his old professor, the one he'd always looked up to. She started calling in every favor she had, contacting alumni, digging through message boards and faculty updates. Eventually, someone let slip, the professor had opened a new lab in Boston. It wasn't proof. But it didn't matter. Something in her gut told her, Aaron was there. She bought the first flight out. No suitcase. No plan. Just hope. And a heart that was barely holding together. When she arrived at the lab, it was still early. The team hadn't started their closed research cycle yet, so the entrance wasn't on lockdown. Tina spotted a young man stepping out to grab coffee and rushed up to him. "Please," she said breathlessly, "I'm looking for someone, Aaron Walker. Can you tell him, someone from Riverside is here?" Aaron. When one of the senior fellows told me someone from Riverside was asking for me, I was stunned. No one here knew I was in Boston, not really. I'd only told a handful of people where I was going, and I'd made sure Tina wasn't one of them. My mind scrambled to think who it could be. But the moment I stepped into the lobby and saw her, Tina, I froze. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, but the second her eyes met mine, they filled with tears. She didn't hesitate. She came right up and grabbed my hand. "Why did you leave me like that, Aaron? Why didn't you say goodbye? Do you know how hard I had to search just to find you?" I couldn't answer. I was still reeling from the shock of seeing her here, now, in front of me, holding my hand like none of it had happened. For a few seconds, I didn't pull away. And I saw something flash across her face, hope. Real, fragile hope. Like maybe I wasn't truly gone. Like maybe this was just a storm, and we were still standing in the eye of it. But in the very next second, Tina's fragile hope shattered. Aaron flinched as if waking from a trance and abruptly yanked his hand away. His expression had shifted, cold, closed off, and unmistakably irritated. "What are you doing here?" Tina's heart seized. She hadn't prepared for this, to see him recoil like that. "Aaron, I came to apologize. I don't want to hear it." He cut her off before she could even begin. "My answer hasn't changed. I want the divorce. I don't know how you found me, but please, don't come here again. My first trial run begins tomorrow. All I want is peace and focus. You should go home. I'm sure Liam's waiting for you." That last line felt like a blade. Tina swallowed hard. She knew she'd broken him. She knew her actions, the indifference, the misplaced loyalty, the months of emotional neglect, had carved scars she might never fully undo. But still, she stepped forward. "Aaron, I don't care about Liam. I never did. It's you. It's always been you. 9 years together." And not once had she said those words aloud. Aaron's gaze flicked to her for a beat, then narrowed. A hollow, humorless laugh left his lips. "You think that means something now? After everything?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an edge sharper than anger, disbelief. "Do you even hear yourself? It's pathetic." He turned without waiting for a response and disappeared behind the lab doors. The sound of the lock clicking shut felt louder than any goodbye. Tina stood in place for a long time, staring at the steel-reinforced door. Then she found a nearby hotel. She told herself he couldn't stay inside forever. Eventually, he'd step out. Eventually, they'd meet again. Eventually, she'd explain. But one day passed. Then 2. Then 5. And Aaron never emerged. Finally, desperate, she approached the front security desk. "Excuse me. I'm looking for someone inside. Aaron Walker. I've been waiting for days." The guard glanced at the clipboard, then gave her a flat look. "Ma'am, the research phase has begun. No one will be coming out." Tina's voice caught. "How long until it ends?" He barely hesitated. "Estimated completion? 18 months. Tina boarded the next flight back to Riverside. Alone. Inside, it felt like she'd left something behind in that sterile white lab. Not just Aaron. But whatever flicker of hope she'd carried in with her. Back home, Tina curled up on the massive bed that once felt so safe, so full of life. But tonight, it was nothing but cold. The same sheets. The same room. The same house they'd shared for 5 years. Yet now it all felt foreign. Hollow. Frozen. There would be no one bringing her medicine when she got sick. No one calling her name in that familiar, warm tone. No one leaving a light on when she came home late. She pulled her body into a tight ball, hugging herself like it might conjure back even a trace of his warmth. Eventually, she drifted into sleep. And in the dream, none of this had happened. No fights. No Liam. No shattered trust. Just her and Aaron, two people quietly in love, untouched by the mess of real life. They'd finally gone on that honeymoon they'd never taken. Wandered through Europe hand in hand. Laughed under cafe umbrellas. Took blurry, sunlit photos in front of ancient cathedrals. In every frame, her smile reached her eyes. And in every one of them, he was there, arms around her, like he never left. When she woke, Tina couldn't tell if the dream had been mercy, or punishment. Her voice croaked out of habit. "Aaron?" No reply. Only the chatter of birds outside the window. She reached for the pillow beside her and found it damp. She didn't even remember crying. His voice that day, cold and certain, "I want a divorce." Jason's words, those old photographs. Her own mistake, believing Liam was the one who saved her. It all spiraled in her head like a storm with no eye. No center. No stillness. But then her gaze landed on the divorce papers still sitting on the desk. 2 words stared back at her in heavy black ink. Divorce decree. Something inside her stilled. No. She didn't want a divorce. Even if it meant waiting 18 months while he buried himself in a lab on the other side of the country, she would wait. For 9 years, Aaron had followed behind her, quietly loving her from the shadows. Now it was her turn. Now she would follow him. Not out of guilt. Not out of obligation. But because, finally, she understood. She sat up in bed, spine straightening, jaw set. Let the world think what it wants. She would wait for him. And this time, she would prove it. 2 years later, Riverside Airport. I wheeled my suitcase along with a quiet smile, following the bouncing figure ahead of me as she skipped through the terminal. Every few steps, I glanced around, quietly taking in all the changes that had happened since I last stood on this ground. The lab's Phase 1 trial had taken far longer than we expected, 2 full years. But in the end, it had been worth it. The results were everything we'd hoped for. Our team delivered a breakthrough, and the professor rewarded us with a generous 2-month sabbatical. Now, after all this time, I was finally back in Riverside. I exhaled slowly. It felt strange, familiar, yet distant. But not everything was the same. My eyes softened as they landed on Hannah, whose ponytail bounced like a metronome as she darted ahead. That was what had changed. I wasn't returning alone. 2 years ago, I'd boarded that plane with no one by my side. Now, I had someone walking beside me. And this time, I was here for more than just memories. Hannah glanced back, saw me still trailing behind, and jogged toward me with exaggerated exasperation. She gave me a playful shove. "If you don't hurry up, we're gonna be late." Jason had insisted on throwing a welcome-back party the moment he found out I'd be returning. 2 years is too damn long, he'd said. We're doing this right. Honestly? I'd missed them too. So we set the date for tonight, the very day Hannah and I landed. By the time we reached the restaurant, we were already cutting it close. Hannah tugged my hand, and we rushed up the stairs, laughter echoing as our shoes clattered on tile. I thought I caught a glimpse of something, someone. A figure at the top of the steps, vaguely familiar. But we were in a hurry. My mind brushed it off as a trick of the eye. Across the lobby, Tina stood frozen in place, one hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide and shimmering. Tears spilled over before she even realized they'd gathered. 2 years. She'd waited, counted, endured 2 long, hollow years. And now, just like that, she saw him. Aaron. No one else in the world could understand what those years had been like. Night after night in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. At first, she couldn't sleep. She'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, whispering his name into the darkness. On the rare nights she did doze off, she'd wake up and instinctively call for him. But the only reply was silence. There was no one left to cook her breakfast. No one leaving lights on for her return. No footsteps in the hallway. No warmth on the other side of the bed. She searched the apartment 100 times, hoping to find some trace of him, anything. A forgotten t-shirt. A charger. Even a receipt. But there was nothing. Even the matching pajamas they'd once bought together, gone. Everything had been wiped clean. All she had left was that divorce agreement, now permanently stationed on her nightstand. His signature inked in black. Neat. Certain. Final. It was the only thing he'd left behind. And yet, she'd clung to the belief. If she didn't agree to it, then maybe it wasn't real. But the truth was right there in front of her, in letters and ink. They'd been divorced for a long, long time. Back then, just a day after Tina had flown to Boston to beg Aaron for forgiveness, he had already filed for divorce. His lawyer had come prepared, presenting the photo evidence of her emotional betrayal. The judge signed off without delay. Tina was held fully responsible. Still, Aaron hadn't gone for the jugular. He could have reclaimed the house, but he didn't. He let her keep it. That was the seed Tina clung to. If he really wanted to cut ties, he would have taken back everything. But he didn't. So he must still care. Maybe not much, but enough. She convinced herself that once Aaron saw her again, once she explained everything clearly, how she'd only mistaken Liam for the man who saved her life, how that mistake was over now, how she had cut Liam out for good, he'd come around. 9 years. He'd been by her side for 9 long years. Love like that doesn't just vanish. It couldn't. It wouldn't. So she waited. Waited through all the seasons, through every sleepless night, every cup of cold coffee, every morning alone. She just wanted to see him again. To speak her truth. To fix what was broken. And now, today, after 2 long years, life had finally thrown her a lifeline. She'd seen him. Alive. Safe. Home. But then, there was the girl. The one who walked beside him. The one who laughed with him. Tina's heart clenched at the memory. Still, she talked herself down from the panic. She's probably just a colleague, she thought. The lab girl. That's all. They must have come back together from the professor's research program. Just co-workers. Nothing more. With that comforting lie whispering in her chest, Tina followed them into the restaurant. Aaron and Hannah reached the private room first. The moment he opened the door, boom! A cannon of confetti exploded, showering them both in sparkling streamers. Jason bounded forward, grinning as he clapped a fist onto Aaron's shoulder. 2 years. And not a damn letter. If I didn't know you were buried in a lab, I'd have filed a missing persons report. Laughter erupted around the room, warm and chaotic. The teasing came in waves. Seriously, you dropped the D word and vanished. You could have said something. We were out here thinking you got abducted or something. No joke. You didn't even tell us. And now you're late to your own party. That's gotta be a penalty shot. Damn right. No one's leaving sober tonight, cheers or tears. Hannah stood quietly beside me, a little stiff, clearly uncertain how to act around this loud, affectionate crowd of strangers. I noticed. Of course I noticed. So I reached out and slipped my hand into hers. She looked up at me, caught my eye, and the tension in her shoulders eased. Everything around us faded for a second. The noise. The lights. The laughter. It was just me and her, and that steady warmth I'd come to rely on. Looking around at these familiar faces, friends who were genuinely happy to see me again, I felt something stir deep inside. But before the night could go on, I had one important introduction to make. I cleared my throat, lifted the hand still intertwined with Hannah's, and smiled as I addressed the room. "By the way, since I'm finally back," I said, "let me introduce you all to someone important, my colleague, Hannah." I paused. Then added, calmly but firmly, "And my fiancée." The room went silent for half a second, just enough for the words to settle, before an explosion of cheers and mock outrage filled the air. "You sneaky bastard. Said you were married to science, turns out you've been running double experiments. A fiancé? When's the wedding, man? I'm calling dibs on best man. I want in too. Bachelor parties on me." Laughter echoed off the walls. The joy was contagious. Beside me, Hannah let out a quiet breath. The tension in her shoulders loosened. I could feel it in the way her fingers curled tighter around mine. I glanced at her, her eyes glowing, her lips caught between a smile and disbelief. That look of someone both overwhelmed and completely seen. It was in that moment that I realized. After everything, I'd made the right choice. I almost opened my mouth to share the wedding date. Almost. But before I could speak again, a voice broke through. Fragile. Trembling. Wounded. "She's your fiancée? Then what does that make me?" Tina stood frozen in the doorway. Moments earlier, she'd been fixing her lipstick in the restroom mirror, smoothing out her hair, rehearsing a smile that looked just effortless enough. She hadn't planned on coming to this restaurant tonight. Just a casual dinner. Or so she thought. But fate had handed her a miracle. Aaron. Right here. After 2 years. How could she not walk through that door? She knew it might be awkward. He might still be mad. Or distant. Cold, even. She'd prepared herself for all that. Even if he saw her just as an old friend, she'd take it. As long as there was still space to try. To speak. To explain. She could win him back, she truly believed that. But this? This she never saw coming. Fiancé. That word hit her like an open-handed slap to the face. It echoed again in her ears, fiancé, fiancé, as if the room were suddenly underwater and someone was holding her by the throat. 2 years. 2 years she waited in that hollow, silent house. 2 years of no birthdays. No anniversaries. No closure. And now? Now he was in love. Getting married. To someone else. Tina's lips trembled, but her voice cracked out anyway. Soft. Raw. Desperate. She's your fiancé. Then what was I? She stood there, barely breathing. How desperately she wished, prayed, that Aaron would laugh and say it was a joke. That Hannah was just a colleague. That she'd misunderstood. But he didn't. Instead, the room grew louder. His friends were cracking jokes now, who'd be the best man, who'd be godfather to their future kids. They laughed like it was the best news in years. She couldn't take it anymore. The words burst out of her like a dam breaking. Then Tina pushed the door open. All at once, her eyes locked onto their hands, still intertwined, still warm. She saw how Hannah leaned in closer, how effortlessly Aaron smiled beside her. That closeness. That comfort. Like they'd belonged to each other for a very, very long time. Her chest tightened. She felt like she was drowning in a room full of air. But I didn't care what Tina was thinking. Not anymore. To me, she was just a ghost from a life I'd already buried. We'd divorced 2 years ago. I'd made that decision very clear. And now, here she was, barging into a moment she had no right to claim. Her words, cutting through laughter like a blade, made the room fall awkwardly silent. I turned toward her, frowning, my patience already fraying. What are you doing here? We divorced 2 years ago. Beside me, I felt Hannah stir. She was pouting, adorably annoyed at the interruption. I glanced down and couldn't help but chuckle, tightening my grip on her hand. Guess I'd be doing a little extra sweet-talking tonight. Hannah wasn't one to back down, though. Sensing Tina's eyes burning into her, she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, and casually slipped both arms around my elbow, holding on like she dared anyone to challenge her place. Jason, who'd been enjoying the drinks and jokes, suddenly sobered up. He stepped forward, face hard. "Tina," he said, voice flat, "you made your choice. You picked that other guy. So what are you doing here now?" But Tina didn't seem to hear him. Her gaze never left me. Eyes wide. Voice cracking. "Aaron, this isn't real, right? She's not really your fiancée, right? You're just trying to get back at me, right?" I actually laughed. I didn't mean to, it just slipped out. A sharp, incredulous breath that escaped before I could stop it. Was she serious? After everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the years of indifference, this is what she thought? That this was all some petty performance just to hurt her? Fake? You think this is fake? I raised my brows, utterly baffled. You really think I'd go out of my way to hire a random actress just to piss you off? I didn't even bother hiding the disdain in my voice. Because honestly, I didn't give a damn what she thought anymore. But deep down, there was something I couldn't quite let go of. Confusion. Back when we were together, Tina had always been distant. No matter how much love I poured into her, how patient, how giving, I was met with cold indifference. After a while, I started to wonder if her heart was made of stone. Because no matter how hard I tried to warm it, it stayed ice cold. Then Liam came along. And suddenly, she was all soft glances and gentle smiles. That's when I realized, it wasn't that she couldn't love. She just didn't love me. So I walked away. I gave them my blessing and left. But now? Now she looked at me like I was the great love of her life. Like she'd been pining for me all along. It didn't make sense. Liam may have left Riverside for work, but this? This wasn't the Tina I remembered. I let out a slow breath and turned to face her fully. For the record, Hannah is my real, actual fiancée. I proposed to her. She said yes. And we're getting married, on the 18th. That's 10 days from now. Each word landed like a hammer. Tina's face crumbled. Her eyes turned glassy, red at the rims. It was like she couldn't even process the thought. That the man she thought would always be there for her was marrying someone else. But I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Not regret. Just, done. I didn't want this day ruined by someone who no longer mattered. So I turned to the others. Let's head out, new venue. As I walked past Tina, she instinctively reached out, fingers trembling, barely brushing my coat. But I didn't flinch. I pulled away without hesitation and wrapped my arm around Hannah's waist. Together, we walked out. Tina didn't follow. She just stood there. Still. Small. Alone. Back in the car, Hannah was unusually quiet. She let go of my hand, crossed her arms, and scooted an inch farther away. Then came the softest, most pointed little huff. I tried not to laugh, tried. But I failed. So this was what it felt like. Having a woman care about you enough to get jealous. I'd never known it before. And I liked it more than I cared to admit. When Tina and I had first started dating, she was distant. Always. Nothing I did ever seemed to move the needle. Not the gifts, not the dinners, not the late-night talks. So I tried something stupid. I thought maybe jealousy would stir something in her. I asked a female colleague to help me out, nothing serious, just a bit of an act. We'd carpool, grab meals together, post a few ambiguous photos on Instagram. I waited. And waited. A whole week went by. Tina didn't say a word. Eventually, I cracked first. I asked her, half indignant, half desperate, "Doesn't it bother you? Seeing me with another woman every day?" I'll never forget the way she looked at me. A single glance. Barely a flicker of emotion in her eyes. And then came her reply. "I don't care." 3 words. Carved into my chest like glass. They stayed with me, buried deep in the ribs, where heartbreak turns into memory. And now all it took was my ex walking into a room for Hannah to get all flustered, arms crossed, mood turned sour. That, right there, is the difference between being loved and not. The thought made my chest ache, but in a good way. I reached over and pulled Hannah gently into my arms, my hand sliding over hers, warm and steady. "Don't pout," I whispered against her hair, teasing, "You're about to be a bride. And everyone knows being mad makes you look less radiant." Hannah's cheeks went pink. She huffed. "Are you saying I don't look radiant now?" she demanded, mock offense in every syllable. I threw up both hands immediately, grinning. "You? No way. You're the most beautiful woman in the world." From the front seat, Jason let out a dramatic groan and started laughing. Unbelievable. Who knew our stoic lab rat had it in him? Man, I really should have recorded this. The whole car broke out into chuckles. We ended up heading to a new spot and spending the night laughing, eating, and toasting until everyone's cheeks were warm and the past felt far, far away. Later that evening, I dropped Hannah off first. Her family hadn't seen her in 2 years, and with the wedding 10 days away, I knew they had plenty to catch up on. But when I finally got home and opened the door, Tina was sitting on the living room couch. My parents, Andrew and Molly, sat stiffly across from her, clearly uncomfortable. 2 years ago, when I decided to file for divorce, I hadn't told them the full story. I said I was heading into long-term research, that it would be too complicated to juggle a marriage and the lab. So in their eyes, Tina was the one left behind. And even though they'd never been quite sold on how she treated me, they had noticed how lukewarm she was, they still thought I'd done her wrong. They didn't know what she'd done. They didn't know about Liam. But they knew this. Tina had kept coming by. Not once. Not twice. Almost every week, she'd show up at the complex, never coming upstairs, but always close, like a ghost circling the edge of something she'd lost. For the last 6 months, she'd been coming every other day. And now, here she was. In my house. Waiting for me. Andrew and Molly had tried, more than once, to talk Tina out of coming around. They reminded her gently that when their son had filed for divorce, he'd been firm, adamant, even. There was no use waiting, they said. No point in lingering near the apartment complex when Aaron was away in a lab on the other side of the country. But she kept showing up. They saw it. And slowly, the image they'd once held of Tina, that she'd always been a little cold, a little distant, began to soften. They even talked, just between themselves, about trying to speak with Aaron next time he came home. Maybe, after all those years together, the two of them just needed to sit down, face to face, and actually talk. But then, just as they learned Aaron was finally coming back, they also found out he was engaged. And the wedding was in 10 days. It hit them like a weight in the chest. The guilt toward Tina, who'd waited, who hadn't moved on, was hard to ignore. So when Tina showed up at the door that afternoon, clearly having heard the news, they didn't turn her away. They figured it was better this way, better to let things be said out loud, face to face, than let the ghost of a relationship linger in silence. When I stepped into the house and saw her sitting on the couch, Tina's eyes lit up instantly. She stood up so fast, like she'd been waiting hours. My head throbbed. I hadn't expected this. She'd tracked me all the way here. The same woman who used to complain about having to make small talk with my parents, now she was just sitting here, cozying up in the living room. What was she even hoping to accomplish? Andrew and Molly pulled me aside before I could speak. In a few hushed minutes, they filled in the blanks, how Tina had been coming around for 2 years, quietly walking the complex, never quite crossing the line, but never letting go either. If they hadn't said it out loud, I never would have believed it. In my mind, Tina had never truly cared, not deeply, not the way people in love do. And yet, here we were. I didn't know what game she was playing anymore. But with the wedding just 10 days away, I knew one thing for sure. This needed to end. Cleanly. Clearly. Permanently. I wasn't going to let anything, anyone, ruin the life I'd finally started to build. So I sat down across from her. The first real conversation in over 2 years. No yelling. No blame. Just 2 people, finally laying ghosts to rest. I kept my tone flat. If you've got something to say it now. All of it. Once. Tina's expression faltered. The hope in her eyes flickered, replaced by something brittle. Do we really have to be this distant, Aaron? I tapped my fingers on the edge of the table, rhythm steady, face unreadable. She flinched, just slightly, but enough. Her nails dug into her palms. Was it because of Liam? Is that why you left? I didn't answer. But she wasn't waiting for one. Her voice trembled, gaining urgency. I can explain. I swear, I thought Liam was the man who saved my life. That's all it ever was. I never had feelings for him, not like that. Nothing ever happened between us. She choked mid-sentence, her words cracking under the weight of emotion. When you left, after you left, I finally found out the truth. It was you. That night 6 years ago, it was you who pulled me from that wreck. I got it all wrong, Aaron. Her tears came then, quietly at first, trickling down like rain on glass. And when she looked at me, her gaze was heavy, not just with guilt and regret, but with something far more fragile. Hope. She thought the truth would be enough. She thought knowing it was me would somehow rewind the clock. And for a second, I'll admit it, my chest tightened. I remembered that night, the pain, the fear, the fire. When she first introduced Liam to me, she never told me what night he'd saved her. And I, fresh out of the hospital, had chosen not to speak of that night either. I'd thought I was protecting her. Turns out, silence was the beginning of the end. Even now, with the past behind me, I couldn't help but think, what a damn mess. A simple truth lost in the fog of assumptions. One that could have changed everything, had it come sooner. She reached across the table, voice trembling. I know I messed up. I know I let something good slip away. But I've fixed it. I've cleared it all up now. Can we go back, Aaron? Start again? Her voice cracked on the last word. But my answer was already formed. Cold. Final. No. Tina froze. All the color drained from her face, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. 2 years she'd waited. 2 years she'd convinced herself that I still belonged to her, that love was something fixed and eternal. But she was wrong. Love, when crushed and starved, doesn't stay. She thought I'd always love her. She never imagined the day would come when I didn't. Tina looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "But why?" she whispered. "I do love you." And for a second, I was transported back, to a version of myself I barely recognized now. The guy who spent years loving her quietly. Waiting. Hoping. The guy who told himself that just because she never bought him birthday gifts, it didn't mean she didn't care. That just because she never cuddled up to him like other girls did with their boyfriends, it was just her personality, cold, maybe, but not unfeeling. That just because the word love never once came out of her mouth, didn't mean it wasn't hidden somewhere in her heart. I had believed, truly believed, that if I stayed long enough, loved hard enough, she'd change. I gave her 9 years of my life on nothing but that belief. Then Liam showed up and shattered the illusion I'd built brick by brick around myself. Now here she was, telling me she loved me, after all that. A bitter laugh escaped me. My lips curled with quiet disbelief. "Are you sure about that?" I asked, voice low. Tina blinked, confused by the question. I didn't let her speak. "If you loved me, why didn't you ever buy me a gift on my birthday? If you loved me, why didn't you want to travel with me, but had no problem flying across the country with him? If you loved me, why did you cook for him, clean his place, follow him around like you owed him your whole life?" My voice tightened. Years of buried pain rising to the surface. "You even posed for wedding photos with him, Tina. My heart's made of flesh too. It bleeds like yours. If that's what you call love," I shook my head. "Then I don't want it." With every word, I could see her face draining of color. She wanted to deny it, to argue, to call me wrong. But the silence between us said it all, she couldn't. Because everything I said was true. Every moment she thought I didn't notice, I did. Every act she thought I'd forgiven, I'd simply buried. And now it was all here, laid bare. Finally, she clung to the only defense she had left, Liam. "I only did those things because I thought he was the one who saved me," she said, voice barely audible. "If I had known it was you." "Enough," I snapped, cutting her off. She still didn't get it. Still thought the problem between us started the day Liam walked into our lives. She had no idea, it had started long before that. "Even if there hadn't been Liam, there would have been someone else," I said coldly. "That was always the point. And let's say he was your savior. There are 100 ways to repay a debt. Cooking his meals, running his errands, treating him like your world, that wasn't gratitude, Tina. That was choice." I leaned back in my seat, gaze hard. "You're holding on now because I chased you for 9 years. And now that I've stopped, you're just not ready to lose." I stood. "This is it. Don't look for me again. Let's end this with what little dignity we have left." Without another word, I walked to the door. Held it open. And watched her walk out of my life, for the last time. Tina stumbled back into her apartment like a ghost. Was it just pride? She didn't know anymore. Her mind kept replaying fragments from the past, snapshots of a different time, when things between them were still warm, still possible. She remembered the exact moment she'd asked Aaron if he'd be her boyfriend. His face had turned beet red. He stammered something about whether she was joking. And when she reassured him she wasn't, his whole expression lit up like a child's. She hadn't missed it either, that tiny victory gesture he made behind her back, like he couldn't believe his luck. That was the beginning. 9 years. 9 whole years of a life intertwined. She hadn't always said it, but she had felt it, his love. His care. His loyalty. She never once imagined they'd end in divorce. The day she said yes to his proposal, she meant every word. She did want a life with him. At the time. But now she realized something she'd been too blind, or too selfish, to see before. 9 years. And not once had she truly given back. Not once had she been the one to initiate. To express love. To show him he was cherished. Aaron had carried the entire weight of that relationship on his own. For 9 painful years. And then, when things had gotten hard, she'd turned to another man. Given him her time. Her care. Her energy. And left Aaron in the cold, bleeding silently. Now she was standing in the ruins of it all, hoping for forgiveness that she didn't deserve. She collapsed onto her couch, her chest hollow, her throat tight. And for the first time in years, Tina didn't cry because she wanted something. She cried because she finally understood what she had lost. Me? I slept like a baby. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the weight had been lifted from my chest. The next morning, I was up early, heading into town to pick up the rings and jewelry we'd pre-ordered. Hannah and I had already planned everything. Since I only had 2 months off, we decided to keep things tight, wedding first, then a month-long honeymoon across Europe and Asia. Just the 2 of us. Both families were supportive, pitching in with logistics. All we had to do was show up in our tux and gown and say, "I do." The rings had been designed weeks ago. Classic gold for me. A delicate platinum band with a halo diamond for her. Perfect. I walked out of the store, the small bag in hand, feeling oddly giddy. I held the rings up to the sunlight, watching them sparkle. She's going to look amazing in this, I thought. She'll probably cry the moment I put it on her finger. I didn't notice the 2 men leaning against the side of the building behind me. Didn't see the way they exchanged a glance before quietly falling into step behind me. Didn't feel the danger coiling just a few feet away. Not until I turned the corner. One of them lunged, snatching the bag from my hand in a flash. Instinct kicked in, I started to chase. But before I could even shout, I felt it. A sharp sound, shk, like fabric tearing, but wet. Then pain. Hot, cold, searing pain. A blade. Buried deep. My breath caught. The world tilted. And then, everything went black. The pain I was bracing for never came. I turned sharply. And saw Tina. She was standing in front of Liam, shielding him. One hand clutched her stomach. The other hung limp by her side. Blood was already soaking through her blouse, seeping between her fingers. Her face had gone pale, lips colorless. And just as her knees gave way beneath her, I caught her. My arms wrapped around her instinctively as she collapsed. I dropped to my knees, cradling her carefully, my other hand already reaching for my phone. Emergency. Stabbing victim. Corner of 6th and Willow. She's bleeding badly. Tina's eyes were half open, her breathing shallow and erratic. Pain gripped every inch of her body, and I could see it in her face. It was overwhelming, sharp, almost unbearable. She let out a faint breath, then smiled weakly. It tore at her wound. But she smiled anyway. So this is what it feels like to be stabbed, she must have thought. Aaron must have felt this too, years ago. The same pain. She blinked slowly, struggling to keep her eyes open. I pressed both hands to her abdomen, trying to slow the bleeding. Tina, stay awake. Look at me. Don't sleep. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay. I promise. Sirens screamed in the distance. Moments later, paramedics arrived, surrounding us with swift, coordinated movement. They lifted her onto a stretcher, immediately administering first aid and radioing ahead to the ER. Tina's gaze drifted to me one last time before her eyes finally closed. And then, she was gone. Not dead, just unconscious. 3 hours. That's how long she was in surgery. I sat in the waiting room, hands trembling, my shirt still stained with her blood. The doctor finally came out, removing his gloves with a tired expression. She's stable. The knife missed the vital organs, but the wound was deep. She lost a lot of blood. I exhaled, half sob, half relief, and slumped back into the chair behind me, every muscle drained. My eyes shifted toward the ICU room where she lay unconscious, machines beeping beside her. My emotions were a chaos I couldn't untangle. Shock. Guilt. Confusion. Anger. And something else I didn't dare name yet. She took a knife for me. I couldn't understand it. Was she following me? Why was she even there? Yesterday, I had made it clear, I was walking away. And yet, she had thrown herself between me and danger. Why? I had so many questions. Too many. But for now, I buried them in my chest and waited. Later, her parents arrived. Her mother, Flora, rushed into the room, eyes wide with terror at the sight of her daughter lying pale and motionless in the hospital bed. She pressed a trembling hand to Tina's forehead, as if trying to will her awake. Her voice cracked. Why does this always happen to you? Her father stood behind her, jaw clenched, fists shaking. Neither of them said it aloud at first. But I could see it in their eyes. They blamed me. 2 years ago, I vanished. Disappeared without warning. And Tina, who had always been proud, self-contained, and almost impossible to read, never fully recovered. Now I was back for barely a few days, and she was in a hospital bed, recovering from a stab wound. To them, I was the storm that kept tearing through her life. Flora broke down in front of me, her voice cracking with anger and disbelief. What do you want from her, Aaron? What did Tina ever owe you to deserve this kind of ending? 2 years ago, you disappeared without a word. Now she ends up in a hospital because of you. Why can't you just leave her alone? I didn't argue. I stood there, silent, letting the weight of her fury crash over me. There were things about the past she didn't need to know. Truths that would only add confusion to pain. And the truth now was simple. Today, Tina had saved my life. That fact stood on its own. Flora looked like she was ready to come at me again when suddenly, a faint voice called from behind her. Aaron. Tina. She was awake. Flora rushed to her bedside, her expression shifting from fury to worry. Tina, sweetheart, how do you feel? Are you still in pain? Tina shook her head weakly, her eyes drifting toward me. Flora followed her gaze. She saw what Tina wanted. A moment alone. She didn't like it, but the look on her daughter's face left no room for protest. Reluctantly, Flora and her husband stepped out of the room, leaving just the two of us. The silence felt heavier now. The hospital lights hummed overhead. Tina lay pale and still on the bed. I looked at her, emotion twisting somewhere deep in my chest. Was it worth it? I asked. Tina gave the faintest hint of a smile. It was worth it. Then, after a pause. When you saved me, it must have hurt just as much, didn't it? Her voice was raspy, fragile. I stepped forward quickly. Don't talk. You need to rest. But she shook her head, slow and deliberate. No. I need to say this. She took a breath. Her tone was soft but unwavering. After what you said yesterday, I started thinking. Really thinking. And I realized. I was wrong. I spent years draining you dry. Taking your love for granted. Thinking it would never run out. I just wanted you to know. I regret it. All of it. I didn't know how to say it. I kept hesitating. But then I saw that man pull out the knife, and I didn't think, I just moved. There was only one thought in my head. I couldn't let you get hurt. I never thought I would hear these words from Tina. Not in this life. If she'd said them years ago, maybe I would have cried. Maybe I would have forgiven her. But now everything had changed. I wasn't the same Aaron. The man who would have given up everything for her was gone. What remained was something quieter. Not resentment. Not longing. Just gratitude. A kind of thank you. For both the love and the hurt. Tina saw the silence in my eyes. And she understood. She still wanted to try one last time. If Liam had never existed. Her voice trembled. Do you think we would have made it? I shook my head gently. No. Liam wasn't the reason. He was just the spark. The match that lit an already dying fire. 9 years of cold shoulders, of taking and never giving back. It had worn me down. Even without Liam, even if we had married smoothly. She would never have realized how much damage her indifference had caused. It would have built up. Slowly, silently. Until we broke anyway. Liam just brought the ending faster. In a strange way, I was grateful for that. He saved us from dragging each other even further into something neither of us knew how to fix. Tina looked at me for a long time. And in that moment, she finally saw the truth. We would never go back. She hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. Can I meet your fiancé? I wasn't expecting that. It caught me off guard. For a second, I just stared at her. Then I nodded. If she's okay with it, I don't mind. When I asked Hannah, I was surprised. She said yes without hesitation. Later, when Hannah arrived at the hospital, I quietly closed the door behind her and stepped out, leaving the room to them. Tina sat on the bed, wrapped in bandages. She looked up at the woman who would soon become my wife. And in her eyes, there was no jealousy. Just something softer. Admiration. Longing. The kind of ache that came not from bitterness, but from understanding. From finally seeing the kind of love she once held, but didn't know how to keep. Hannah's eyes fell on the thick gauze around Tina's abdomen. Her face clouded with concern, real, unfiltered concern. That looks painful, she said gently. Are you okay? And in that moment, Tina understood something for the first time. She understood why I loved Hannah. Not because she was clever. Not because she was perfect. But because she could say what she felt. She wasn't afraid to show kindness. Even to the woman who used to hold my heart. She didn't bristle. Didn't lash out. Didn't need to mark territory. After 9 long years of cold silences, missed signals, and love that had to be guessed at. I needed someone who made it obvious. Someone who said the word love out loud. Who didn't make me wonder if I mattered. I don't know what the two of them talked about. All I noticed was the shift in Tina's presence. Something had changed. She didn't look angry anymore. Didn't look like she was trying to win anything back. There was a stillness in her now. Something like peace. Later, I asked Hannah what they had discussed. She smiled, stuck out her tongue, and said, "Secret. That's girl stuff." I laughed. "Women are mysterious creatures," I said, shaking my head. And I didn't ask again. During Tina's stay at the hospital, I visited every other day. Sometimes with Hannah. Sometimes alone. We talked easily now. About the past. About what we'd learned. About where we were each headed next. The day before the wedding, I still made time to stop by. There were a million last-minute things to do, so I didn't stay long. As I stood up to leave, she called out behind me. "Can I come to your wedding tomorrow?" I paused. Then I nodded. That night, I sent over an invitation and a gift bag. Inside was a box of sweets we'd chosen for the guests, wrapped in soft pastel paper. Tina unwrapped a piece. She turned it over in her fingers, then slowly placed it in her mouth. A small smile tugged at her lips. It had been a long, long time since she'd tasted anything sweet. The wedding day. Guests filled the venue, friends, family, even Professor Howard and most of the research team, some of them flying in during their time off just to be here. The professor clapped me hard on the shoulder, grinning ear to ear. Well, didn't expect you to steal one of my best students. You lucky bastard." My lab mates whistled and teased, cracking jokes as they straightened each other's ties. But I could barely hear them. Because right beside me stood Hannah. In a white gown that shimmered like morning light, veil draped over her shoulders, smile as wide as the sky. And in that moment, I could feel happiness rising in me like sunlight through my chest. With Hannah, I had learned what it meant to be loved without hesitation. To be seen. To be chosen, every single day. The ceremony began. Hannah walked slowly down the aisle, arm in arm with her father, Scott. When they reached the altar, Scott gently placed her hand into mine. "My daughter's in your hands now." I met his gaze and gave the only promise that mattered. "You can count on me. I'll spend my life taking care of her." Then came the vows. The rings. The kiss. Applause thundered across the hall. Laughter. Cheers. Our future unrolled in front of us like a white carpet. Somewhere near the back of the room, hidden among the guests, Tina clapped along with everyone else. But her eyes never left me. And for a moment, just a moment, her mind traveled backward. To her own wedding, 5 years ago. She couldn't even remember what Aaron had looked like that day. Not really. But she knew this much. He must have put everything into it. He planned the venue, reviewed every caterer, researched the photographer, priced floral packages, meticulously. And she? She hadn't cared about any of it. She hadn't lifted a finger. So when he finally chose to leave, how much must that decision have hurt? She blinked, and a single tear traced its way silently down her cheek. It was too late. But he had found happiness. And she told herself she should be happy for him. She closed her eyes. Whispered her goodbye in silence. That night, after hours of greeting guests, posing for photos, and stealing quiet moments with Hannah between dances, I finally sat down to rest. Jason walked over, a strange look on his face. He handed me a small envelope. "Tina asked me to give you this. And she told me to say, congratulations." He patted my shoulder and disappeared into the crowd. I'd completely forgotten she said she might attend. But I hadn't seen her all day. I opened the envelope and read her letter slowly. "Aaron. I'm sorry. I haven't fully let you go, but I know now that will never be possible again. You were right, life has to move forward. It's time for me to look for mine. Our 9 years together will always be the happiest chapter of my life. I'll never forget it. And I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to tell you this face to face. But I do hope, truly hope, that you and Hannah will have a lifetime of joy. You deserve it. Take care. Tina." I folded the letter gently, set it aside on the table. Then stood up and went to find my wife. My future. The life we had just begun. And as for Tina, she was right. It was time for her to go find her life too. The past was over. The future had just begun. A new chapter, for all of us.